Hey, can y'all hear Brittany?
Yes.
Yeah, I heard you, but I can't hear Brittany.
I can't hear her either. Okay, can you hear me now? Okay. I'm
Yes,
sorry, I'll
ma'am.
do the
Yes, ma'am.
introduction again so y'all can
Thank you.
get the full experience.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just going to go over today's workshop. It's the webinar number 11, Job Application Skills, and it's getting an interview. And our workshop instructor for today is going to be Ronnie Vella. And if you have any questions or would have any input, please feel free to unmute or write it in the chat. I'll be checking the chat. And if you have any other questions, please let us know. Okay, Ronnie, are you ready?
I am. Let me just share my screen here. Make sure I share the right one. All right. Good, well, not morning anymore. Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here and glad to have your attention today. So this is your 11th workshop about getting an interview, and so the primary focus of this workshop is going to be resume writing. I'm Ronnie Bella. I am a program coordinator for the South Texas AHEC program. And the session that you're going to experience today was developed by the South Texas AHEC program team as part of a larger curriculum that was called Employment Job Skills for CHWs. So that was a 10-session program that was developed for CHWs that were looking for employment to assist in developing those important skills in searching and applying for CHW positions. Just a little bit about that program. Those sessions alternated between important job preparation skills and the Schnotchley program, which culminated in the group and individual development of a resume for each individual participant. So this session is just the resume writing portion of that program with a little bit of extras thrown in because I was asked to cover headshots and cover letters as well. So unless there's any questions, we'll go ahead and get started. Let's see. Alrighty, so our objectives for today. So by the end of this session, we hope that you will be able to describe the purpose of a resume in seeking employment, and then also understand clearly the different sections of a resume. So we're also going to briefly touch, like I said before, on cover letters and headshots. So why is a resume important? Why do I actually need a resume? Well, if a job listing asks you for one, supply it. Period. No question. I've heard people say in the past that, well, my application has everything that's going to be in my resume anyway. Why do I have to put one in? But if they're asking for it, you need to put that in there. Otherwise, your application will probably never actually even be looked at. If they're asking for something specifically from you, if you do not provide that, that already shows them something about your work ethic and what you're willing to do in the position and for the position. So remember, if they ask for a resume, always provide it. It is not to be considered optional. It might be redundant, especially after you fill out the application, but it is really important. And it also, it does more than that really, because it allows more freedom in providing information about yourself and your experience. So what else does it do? It serves as a way to outline and highlight your specific skills and experiences that are relevant to the position. An application usually is very very formal in the way that it's set out, and you're not able to really highlight the specific things that might make you the perfect candidate for the position you want. It also provides an opportunity to display the benefit you offer to the position and the employers. And then finally, it illustrates how well you are matched to the position or to the organization. So now that we know why we need a resume, let's talk a little bit about the resumes themselves. So there are 4 basic parts to a resume. And in total, a resume should be about 1 to 2 pages. You really don't want to go longer than that. The 4 different parts of a resume are your summary, your highlights, your experience, and your education or certifications. So your summary is just a quick description of your qualifications that explain why you're a good fit for the role, and it can include your achievements and skills. Your highlights are going to be your specific skills and strengths, generally in kind of a listing format as they relate to the job you're seeking. Your experience section is going to clearly outline the specific work, whether volunteer, paid work, or other life experiences that you have that are related to the positions that you seek. And then finally, the education and certification section is going to be the component that outlines your educational background, including your CHW certification. Please don't leave that off. I've seen people leave that off before, applying it for jobs that are CHW specific. So if you have your CHW certification, you definitely want to be very proud of it and put that in there as well. But then also look at the job description. Are they asking for any other kind of certifications that you might have? You know, is it working in a situation where CPR might be needed? So having that might be a benefit as well. Things that we wouldn't necessarily always put on our resume might be important for that specific position. So we're going to look really quickly at an example of a resume specific to the role of CHWs. And so this is one that we just kind of cooked up from a variety of different CHW experiences. So at the top, you're going to have your name, your contact information, your address. Make sure you choose a very legible font. You don't want a fancy script that people are going to have trouble reading. You want something very typical, Arial, Times New Roman, something like that. And then you've got the 4 different sections that you're going to have. You've got your summary, which is, you know, a short 2 to 4 sentence, or 2 to 4 sentence, 2 to 4 line, just depending on how you construct your sentences, summary of why you're a good fit for the position, your highlights, which again is more or less kind of just a list of the things that would really make you a good fit, your experience, whether paid or volunteer, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about that section specifically, and then finally your certification and education information. Alrighty, so developing the experience, whether paid or voluntary, section of your resume. So one thing that you will notice on here is when filling it out, we're not going to go in order. And this just really kind of benefits you and helps in the way that you're constructing your resume, and that the most important information is where it needs to be, but that your brain is kind of putting together all of the information that you're collecting for this, and allowing you to get that in your summary. So we're going to start with the experience section of your resume.
Hi, Ronnie. We just had a quick question in the chat, and Pamela
Absolutely.
Hendricks is asking how far, like how many years should we go back on our resume?
That is a really good question. So generally speaking, you want to go back about 10 years. But that, again, like with many things, there's exceptions to everything. If the last 10 years, or say the last 9 years of your life, you were working in something completely unrelated, but 13 years ago, you had a really great job that was, that involved a lot of advocacy, a lot of one-on-one, building rapport, anything CHW oriented, or anything that really fits that job description, you want to include that there as well. So it's very much, so you're with applications, a lot of times that's where you're going to put like very specifically only so much if they ask for only so much, or everything if they ask for everything. The resume, you can go back 10 years, you can go back 15 years. You want to show some consistency in what you're putting in there, but also you want to put in what's relevant. And that's the real key with resumes, is you want to put in what's relevant to the job that you're looking for. So if the last 9 years the job you had was not relevant to what you're applying for, then that's going to be less important on your resume than the other things. Now, if it is the last 9 years, you definitely want to put that in there also, but then you want to put in more that shows that relevant experience that you have in relation to the job that you're seeking. So yeah, so no hard and fast rule on that one. But generally speaking, 10 years is a good number, but if your experience before that is important, definitely include that as well. So again, for our experience section, it's going to clearly outline the specific work, whether volunteer or other life experiences that you have that are relevant to the position you seek. And I want to be very specific about it not necessarily having to be paid work. It can be volunteer work. It can be life experiences that you have as well that are that can be really important. I've worked with some CHWs in the past that were working on doing their resumes, and they're like, well, I don't really have any job experience. I don't have, I've been a homemaker for X number of years. But then we would talk a little bit more about her experiences and what she did during that time. And some of them had home businesses where they were crafting things, which if you've ever had your own personal business, you know that you're responsible for pretty much everything going into that. So that is an amazing amount of organizing, of orchestrating, of fundraising, of budgeting, of managing exposure, of promoting, of just everything. And so there's so many things involved in that. And they're like, oh, well, I've never really done anything. No, you've done a lot. You've done an amazing amount of things. People that volunteer with their children's PTA organizations and organize fundraisers or organize carnival events, things like that. Those are all relevant experiences that you can add into your resume if they're relevant to the job that you're seeking. So that's really kind of the key word in all of that is it relevant? So we're going to take a little bit of a closer look at the CHW experience section of the resume. And so remember that when you're reviewing those job descriptions, you want to reflect on how your paid or voluntary work experiences match with the job description. So let me pull that back up real quick. I'm going to make this just a little bit bigger because I'm having trouble seeing it here. You guys might too. So one other handy tip that I'll let you guys in on that you might already know if you've done a resume before. I generally like to put everything in my resume. And then as I'm choosing what job to apply for or who to submit it to, I'll go in and take that giant resume and trim it and clip it to what is relevant for the job I'm applying for. It saves a lot of time, honestly, because you're not having to recreate it every single time, and you're getting to kind of jog your memory on the different things that you may have done. So like this sample resume has their experience. Now they have a lot of volunteer experience, this person, in addition to their paid experience, and they wanted to show that there. So next to the dates, they put, whether it was volunteer or paid. So in the experience section, you really want to put it in columns, and on one side, the dates that you were doing this work. And then on the right-hand side, you want to put in who you were doing the work for. If you were self-employed, you can put, entrepreneur, you can put sole proprietor, whatever, however you had your business set up. So what your job title was, who you were working for, where that was, and then also just a brief description of what you were what you were doing in there. And again, I really recommend putting in everything you can remember that you were doing for that job. And then when you're actually doing a resume for a specific job description, to tweak it so that you're not giving them too much to read, but you're making sure you hit on all the relevant parts and you're not forgetting anything. So like I said, you want to go chronologically, but you want to go from the most recent to the oldest. So you'll see here on hers, it was to the present because she's been in that position for a long time, but then all the way back to 2000. So that's about, or I'm sorry, to 1984. So we're looking at a long history of work for her. But you wouldn't necessarily put all of that in your resume that you're submitting to a job. So go through and see like, okay, well, did the work I did as a census enumerator, was that relevant to the position I'm applying for? And so we'll look at a couple of these. So like here at the most recent one, she was working at the Reach Center and she was a patient navigator. And then she put in there the different programs that she was working on. Below that, her work as a promotora. And work as a promotora can be a paid position. It can be a voluntary position. A lot of the CHWs and promotoras that I know started off as volunteers, and that's how they got involved in the work. They knew that that was something where their heart was, and kind of went forward with it from there. And so that would be kind of the gist of what you would put in that experience area. So again, you want to put the dates starting at the most recent and working backwards. And you want to add in what was your job position, who were you working for, what your job duties, responsibilities, and accomplishments were. I don't limit it to your job duties and responsibilities. If you pulled a company out of a really difficult position by some of the work that you did, or if you got commended for different things, that's somewhere that you can put that in your experience section. And so the next section, I went backwards, sorry about it. So the next section is going to be developing your certification education section of your resume, which is the section that will follow your experience section. Now, we all have different education experiences. We all have different certification experiences. So this is going to look different for everybody. But this component essentially outlines your educational background, including your CHW certification. Again, don't leave that off. It's so important, and it's such a wonderful thing to have accomplished that CHW certification, whether you got grandfathered in because of the work you did previously or you completed the training. That amount of knowledge is incredibly important and incredibly beneficial. So here we've got our person has an associate's degree at a college, and then she also has her CHW certification. Put in your CHW certification number if you have it. If you are newly certified and you don't quite have your number yet, you can put pending, but they are able to look up that CHW number and verify whether or not you are a certified CHW. So again, you're going to want to do that chronologically as well, from the most recent to the oldest. And you're going to put in there, again, in 2 columns, first the year that you achieved that, and then also what it is, where it's from, and that sort of thing. You want to, so like if you went to, like here it's Northwest Vista College, she got her Associate of Applied Science in Community Health. If you're wondering how to put in your CHW certification, it would be from the Texas Department of State Health Services. Community health worker would be the certification. If you're a community health worker instructor, that would be a completely separate certification. And then your certification number. We gave her number 1 right here. That's not really her certification number, but because she would have to have been a CHW for a lot longer than that for that to be her number.
Hi, Ronnie. Just really quick. So we have a question in the chat from Claudia. She's asking, what if you're in the process of going to school? Do you also put pending?
You can, especially if it's relevant. You can put in the date that you began and like hyphen to present and the college, and you can put like pursuing whatever degree it is that you're trying to get, and your expected graduation date. So, and that will kind of give them an idea of what you're working on as well. And that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. And then also just a little tip, make sure, and I'm going to say this probably about 15 times before this presentation is over, is that read the job description carefully. You never know what other certifications might be beneficial to them that they might not necessarily be asking for. If you're going to be working with groups of children or groups of adults that might be challenged in certain ways, maybe a CPR certification might be important, and you're not thinking about it because, well, that's the job doesn't ask for it. But what might be important for that job that would give you kind of an edge up from everyone else? So that's kind of the meat of the resume, because you're going to be going through your previous experiences, and thinking about everything that you did with those. You're going to be going through your education and thinking about what you learned. And then depending on the type of education it is, you can think about specific classes that might have given you certain skills that others didn't. Like if you did, not sure why this is coming to mind, but if you did psychological testing in one of your classes, then that requires a certain amount of the ability to develop rapport, but not too much rapport, so that you can get like kind of honest answers that aren't led, and that sort of thing. So just really think about what your experiences are and what your education provided to you, and that will bring you to your developing the highlights section of your resume. And so, so the highlight section, again, is just a list of your specific skills and strengths as they relate to the job you're seeking. So that is very, very important. It's as they relate to the job you're seeking. So definitely be specific in these. So in the highlight section of your resume, again, it's going to be essentially a list. And you can use bullets, you can use hyphens, however you want to do that to create that list. And because I like to make like a master resume and put in the highlights of all of my skills and all of my skills and different strengths. My list is going to be really long, but then I'm going to tailor it to the specific job I'm seeking. So on the highlights section, here we have Ms. Valdez as being people-oriented. Well, that's really important if you're applying for a job where there's going to be a lot of face-to-face interaction with people. Not so important if you're going to be sitting in front of a computer all day managing data. So like when you're going through your highlights for yourself, think of specifically, well, what is going to be relevant to this job that I'm seeking right now? Then also, like, she's got management experience. She's got both fiscal and personnel experience, but also managing a household also gives you a certain level of experiences, because maybe you've got 5 kids of your own that you have to worry about, or if you're a homemaker or a nanny, you've got, other people's schedules that you need to worry about. So like time management is also an experience and a skill that you can get from that might not be seen like super traditionally if it's not a paid job, but that is definitely a skill and a highlight that you can put in there. She's got caregiver experience, community outreach experience, community organizer experience, community leadership experience, and a lot more people have these experiences and strengths than I think self-identify as those. If you're active in your church, if you're active in a community group that you do a lot of work with and means a lot to you, you've got a lot of experiences that you can draw from for your resume that again might not be super traditional, but they are there. If you work with diverse communities, if you're working with youth and children, if you're working with adults, if you're working with differently abled people, working with faith communities. She's got experience being a patient navigator and a case manager. And super important as well is she's bilingual in Spanish and English. Now, for not all of us are blessed enough to be able to really say that we're bilingual, where we can read, we can write, we can in a different language. I definitely can't. I can read fairly well in Spanish, but don't get me to try to speak it because you will not understand a word I'm saying, with the exception of maybe hola. But that's a skill as well. But if you can only read Spanish, or if you can only write Spanish, or if you can have a limited proficiency in speaking Spanish, but you can speak it, that's also a skill that you want to put in there as well. So like I said, the best thing to do is make a giant master list of all the skills that you can think of for yourself, revisit it 3 or 4 different times when your brain is thinking a little bit different things, and then tailor it down to each specific job that you're looking to do or to apply for. And then finally, the summary section of your resume. So in developing the summary section of your resume, this is going to be short. So if you're a long-winded person, try not to be, because you're trying to fit in as much information about your qualifications, the really important ones, not all of your qualifications, but the ones that might be important for this job, and explain why you're a good fit for the role. And you can include some of your achievements and skills in this as well. So we're going to take a quick look once more at our sample summary over here and see what she put for her summary. So she's got 2 sentences here, about a total of 4 lines. And in summaries, you really want to choose every word carefully. That can make this very difficult to do. If you're thinking about it of like, okay, I've got to come up with what I'm going to say, and I've got to get it right. And that's true, but you don't have to get it right the first time, because this is your resume. You get to work on it for as long as you need to. Well, as long as you stay within the job application deadline. But you can work on it for an extended period of time. It's not the same as having to explain my summary to you right here, right now, and get it right. So here we've got a highly dedicated and committed community health worker with an outstanding record of community service, volunteerism, and community advocacy. Just especially skilled in community organizing, community outreach, and health education for diverse individuals and families living with health inequities. It's a really great sentence. Not a lot of wasted words, not a lot of extra words. You do want to keep it in kind of very an active voice versus a passive voice, just to be able to really, it brings more energy and vibrancy to the summary. But also in your summary, when you're writing it, you want to make sure that what you're saying is backed up by the rest of your resume. That if you're saying you've got an outstanding record of volunteerism, I should be able to read further down into your resume and see evidence of volunteerism, whether it's from your highlights, whether it's from your experience, whether it's from your, education. In your education section, you might put in that you underneath it, like maybe some people put in like some clubs that they were a part of and how they volunteered with them. That's okay. And especially if it supports what you're saying about and talking about within your summary.
So we have 2 quick questions, Ronnie.
Sure.
So the first one is from Van Carlos, and they ask, with the advent of technology, what are your tips for not getting your resume kicked out by a bot?
Whew, that is tricky because
Yeah.
it changes all the time.
Good question.
Yeah, no, it's an excellent question, because that is something that definitely, oh, hang on, let me go back a slide real quick so we're not looking at that. So yeah, that's a really good question. You want to make sure you look at the job description and look at what they're looking for. If they're looking for somebody with, my mind went blank, like a experience with organizing. You want to make sure organizing, something like that is in there frequently. So it tags it as like, oh, there's, you know, so you get past those bots that are used so commonly now. You know, I never will tell you to trust the internet for everything, because it's the internet and a lot of stuff gets to be out there. But if you look at reputable sources, you can Google kind of like what the current suggestions are for that, because like I said, it does change all the time, like the different things that they're looking for. But for the most part, use keywords that they use in the job description in your resume, so that it does get flagged as a potential good fit.
Thank you. I think that answers the question well. Ariel, I saw that your hand was raised. Was that kind of pertaining to this question, or did you have a separate question?
Yeah, no, I was gonna say I've also heard that sometimes the algorithm is so sensitive that if your resume does not match word for word within what you put into the application, it could get easily kicked back as well. And it's one of those things that we just don't know, or the recruiters don't know, because again, it's going through a computer system. And so recruiters only look at the ones that have already been filtered out. So just be careful when you're doing your resume, and when you're doing your application, that it does match, like I said, word for word. And then those keywords too, like Ronnie said, making sure that you find what keywords are listed within the description, so that you can list that, like Ronnie mentioned, is that you would just tailor your resume so that you can hit those keywords.
Thank you. I think that was very helpful. Another question that we're seeing in the chat is from Linda. It says, how many pages should it be when we are tailoring the resume?
Once you've tailored the resume, you want it to be 1 to 2 pages max. Do not go over 2 pages. Some people have told me in the past, like, well, I want to include all of this information because it's super important and I think it's super relevant. And while that might be true, be as succinct as possible and keep it under 2 pages. The rule used to be no more than 1 page. That's changed a little bit. Now it's usually 1 to 2 pages for a resume. But people, even if you think it's really important and it needs to be in there, people are often not going to, or don't have the time to read everything that you've done. So you have to be willing to sacrifice the little things, maybe try to avoid redundancies or find ways to combine things that to show that you have more experience, even if it's the same experience, but you really want to be succinct because you don't want to go over 2 pages.
Thank you. And then one more question we have from Shawnee. She says, where is the best place we can save the resume to access it, because I have problems accessing? And does that include the cover letter or not? I think she's referring to how long the resume should be.
Right. Okay. So no, it does not include the cover letter. The resume itself is a standalone document. But as far as where you should save it, it kind of depends on what your patterns are like. If you're super old school, like my mom, she saves her resume printed in paper and retypes it or writes on it and adds to it as needed. I use my Google Drive to save my resume and pretty much any important documents that I think I'm going to need access to. And then just make sure that you maintain that accessibility to it. But it's going to be different for every individual. Like with Google Drive, I like it because I can be on any computer and access my Google account and access my drive. But you also have to be disciplined enough to organize your Google Drive in a way that you're going to be able to find your resume. Some people like to keep them on their local computers. I used to do that as well. And then my hard drive completely unrecoverably failed one year. And I stopped doing that and started using an online service, just because that's, luckily I had a printed version of my resume still, because I will keep So every time I tailor a resume for a specific job, I will keep that saved as something different as well. So I know what I submitted to them, what jobs I applied for, and that sort of thing. So luckily I had that to recreate what I needed, but that was a big old shocker, because that kind of, yeah, that kind of threw me when all of a sudden your hard drive crashes and you realize you have lost some of the most important information that you have. So I do recommend an online service. Saving it to your hard drive is great too. Just make sure you have a backup somewhere. But honestly, I don't trust anything anymore. So even with a online service, I will have a backup. Like I've got Google Drive and I also use OneDrive. So like I've got everything in at least 2 places to make sure that I'm covered one way or another.
Thank you. I think that's a great point, to have multiple places to save it. And just to kind of go over having the one document of a resume that's just a general resume, and then how you said when you're tweaking it, you want to make sure that you're saving the original and creating another one that you might tailor for that specific job. And then another question we're seeing is Claudia asks, should you always include a cover letter?
No. And yes, all at the same time, which brings us to our next slide. So as far as cover letters go, I can't stress this enough, read the job description, read what they're asking for. Generally speaking, I will say always include a cover letter, until I ran across a job description that says, do not include a cover letter. If they say don't include it, don't include it. That is the quickest way to get your application thrown out, is if you either don't include something that's asked for or include something that they say don't send me, because it shows that you're either not paying attention or you're not willing to do what is asked of you, or think that you know better. They know exactly what it is that they want from you, and they will ask for it. Now, if they don't say whether or not to include a cover letter, I would recommend that you do it anyway. Cover letters are kind of important. They can do a lot of things for you. Because your resume, you really want it only to be 1 to 2 pages long. The application is only going to have spaces for the things that they are asking for. So if you submit a cover letter along with your resume, it does several things. It gives you an opportunity to introduce yourself and summarize your background. But it also gives you a chance to elaborate on the skills or achievements from your resume. You can get a little bit more detailed here. And then a good cover letter actually complements your resume and can help you land the interview. In that, you want to put in like what you really think makes you the best candidate for this position. And you can get a little wordier with it, and the language can be a little bit different from what you have in your resume, and you can really highlight specific things in a way that you can't with your resume. One thing though, don't introduce new information in your cover letter. Like if it's not backed up in your resume somewhere, like I say, you can elaborate on what's in your resume, but you don't want to introduce new information, because that might either get overlooked, or they read it in the cover letter but didn't see it in your resume, and then that introduces new questions, and they may or may not make the effort to have those questions answered. But also, if a cover letter is asked for, do not leave it out. That is the easiest way to get your application thrown out. So in your cover letter, and these, so I've been looking at jobs and things for, I guess probably over 30 years now, if I go through my lifetime, and cover letters have changed. Not a whole lot, but enough to make it worthwhile to do a quick 2024 cover letter template. There's a million templates you can find online. Look for something that works well for you, and kind of fits with you. But every cover letter should have a header and contact information about who you are, a formal greeting. Try to get information about who the hiring manager is if you can, or if you can't find out who the hiring manager is, what department is it going to be, and look for the head of that department. Try to stay away from something informal or general if you can. It's not always going to be possible, but if you can, make it very specific to who you think you're going to be trying to introduce yourself to. The first paragraph should really be kind of an introduction. You're introducing yourself in the opening paragraph and explaining your interest in the role that you're wanting to fill. Your next paragraph is essentially going to be the body. In the body, you're going to elaborate on why you're the best candidate for the job and a good match for the company. You're really kind of focusing on selling yourself here, selling your skills, selling your achievements, any relevant experiences. You're going to kind of want to sell them on yourself. And then your conclusion, just a quick summary of your key points. Again, don't bring anything new in your summary, because it's supposed to be about what you've talked about before, and then just kind of wrap it up professionally. Any questions regarding cover letters right now?
So we don't have a question regarding cover letters, but we do have a question about what about a letter of recommendation? And that's from Melissa Benitez.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Melissa. That's an important question. Letters of recommendation are often asked for. They'll usually, so sometimes they ask you for letters of recommendation, sometimes they ask you just for references. If they ask for a letter of recommendation, you want to ideally have this be from somebody that you have worked with in a professional capacity before. If they ask for several, I've had jobs before ask me for multiple, and I'll try to include maybe somebody that I worked under, somebody that I've worked beside, somebody that I've worked above, because that gives them different, it gives them a little bit of different perspectives on you. Like, how do you do as somebody that follows directions and has to meet deadlines and has to meet certain demands? How easy are you to get along with when working with other people? And what's your managerial style if it's from somebody that you were managing? You know, are you a manager that's easy to get along with, so that you know you're so that people actually want to work with you and not work against you? So like, just depending on how many you have and how many they ask for, you know, of course, you're going to have to reach out to these people and ask them for a letter of recommendation. Try not to get just one from a person once and recycle it and use it for every job that you apply for. If you can, if you've got a good enough relationship with this person, ask them to tailor it a little bit. Let them know what job you're applying for and what they are seeking, or and so that they can think a little bit about what experiences that they've had with you that would make you a good match for that job. Now, that's a lot easier said than done, because getting a reference letter, that takes time out of other people's lives, and sometimes it's difficult if you haven't maintained those contacts or relationships. It can be a little bit harder than other things, but in an ideal situation, you're going to want to have like those different perspectives and very tailored. If all you can do is get one that's kind of generalized, use one that's general. It's better to submit something that might not be absolutely the best than not submit it at all if it's being asked for. I would not submit, with the exception of the cover letter and the resume, I would not submit something that's not asked for until it's asked for, because that's just extra information that they don't necessarily want or have time to read at that point.
Thank you, Ronnie. I think that answered that question really great. We have another question concerning cover letters, and it's, do we have a sample how a cover letter looks with all the points brought out?
Oh, that I did not prepare for you guys, because it was not part of this initial so this session was a certified session that we had as part of something else, and we did not dive into cover letters as completely as.
I think with this being part 1, we can include a sample of cover letter in part 2. So
Perfect.
yeah, so if y'all would like to see that, that will be not next month, but the month after that, and we'll make sure to have a sample of the cover letter. A next question we have is from Iris. She asks, where do you place your references in the resume?
You don't. Your resume is not your references. A lot of times you will do a separate sheet that is references if they're asking for references at that time. So you'll have your 1 to 2 page resume, and then so I don't know what the standard on that is right now, but I used to put at the bottom of my resume, references available upon request, and then I would have a page of references ready to shoot out if I needed to at a moment's notice. Always let your references know that you are supplying somebody their information to call you about a reference, especially in this day and age where none of us answers our phone if we don't know the phone number. So that's very important, but no, it is not actually part of your resume. You would want to submit that as just a very simple separate sheet with name, contact information, and possibly like the how they know you or what your relation to them is.
Thank you. That's all the questions that I'm seeing in the chat so far. Eugene is sharing some really good links to LinkedIn on different questions that people have asked. So if anybody wants to take a look at the chat and reference those links, they are great resources. And I will let Ronnie continue.
Okay, so on to the last topic that I was asked to cover, which is, well, if my mouse would cooperate. And it does not look like it wants to. All right, I'm sorry, you guys. I'm just going to stop sharing and, well, if I can even do that. Brittany, can you make me stop sharing? Do you have that superpower?
I can try. Give me 1 second.
Okay. Okay, great. Sorry about that, guys. I'm thinking it's probably the battery in my mouse. Unfortunately, I don't have access to that right now.
Yeah,
So,
but while Ronnie's working on that, can I have everybody just put their name and CHW number in the chat if you haven't already? And then Ronnie, just let us know when you're ready to continue.
yeah. Okay, well, you know what? We're just, so the last thing we were going to talk about was headshots, and we'll just talk about them. I did not have a sample for you of headshots either, so it was mostly just stuff we can talk about. So as far as headshots go, what is a headshot? So a headshot is a portrait photo where the focus is on your face, usually starting from about the mid-torso or the shoulders and up. So the image take up about 60% of the frame of the picture. You want to make sure that your lighting is good. Good lighting really is key. If you can be near natural light, that's generally good, but always check the pictures afterwards to ensure that there are no light spots or shadows making your face look kind of weird. You want to be able to make sure that your face is kind of clear. And this is headshots from the perspective of, I don't have a couple of $100s to go and blow on getting a professional headshot done from a professional photographer. So I'm going to take my nifty, super handy cell phone and take some pictures of myself, or have a friend take pictures of me, which honestly, a lot of headshots, that's kind of what they are these days. You want to make sure there's contrast between the background and your appearance. If you have really dark hair like mine, you don't want to be against a black background because you kind of fade into it and there's not a clear delineation of you from what's behind you. You don't want to have a lot of stuff in the background. Like here, you can see my bookcase, you can see my door to my office. You want as much as you can, kind of a blank wall, something, or something that simulates a photographer's backdrop. You also want to make sure that your clothing is appropriate and professional. You want to avoid t-shirts and wrinkled clothing. All you're really worrying about is yourself from mid-torso up. So, maybe something with a little bit of a collar. If all your options are t-shirts, maybe layer 2 different colored t-shirts on top of each other. So it looks like you've got a little bit of a specialized collar. There's a lot of ways, especially when you're only showing part of your body, to kind of make yourself look like professional. Also, sit up straight, don't slouch. Posture is very important in looking at that. Also, consider your facial expression. And when you're doing this, think about what kind of job it is that you're applying for, if it's a professional headshot, or what your position is, if it's for your career. If you're supposed to be working in a very friendly, very attached, very connected manner with people, a scowl is not what you want to have on your face when you're doing your headshot. Maybe an open face smile, or an open mouth smile, seeing little teeth, but not, because that's a little scary. But if you want more of an authoritarian look, maybe a closed mouth smile, like Brittany's doing a perfect one right now. It's a perfect closed mouth smile, and there's a good open mouth smile. So always look at kind of what you look like and what message that you're sending out with that facial expression. The other thing that I want to point out is that it needs to be current. Ideally, a picture from the last 1 or 2 years. Not to trivialize it at all, but you don't want it to be like going on a date with somebody that you met online and the picture is them from 10 years ago with about a 50-pound different, totally different hair. You know, maybe they've had facial reconstruction in the meantime and you can't identify them at all. You want it to look like you, because they're going to make that connection between that picture and you professionally. And then also, if you look too different, then it gives it kind of implies maybe a duplicitousness about you, because you're trying to put yourself off as something that you're not, or something that's inaccurate. And then, especially if you're doing these headshots for yourself with your cell phone, relax, take your time. Your phone is not going to care if you take 50 to 60 shots of yourself just to get a good one. Take your time with it, and don't sit there and like, okay, I've got to smile, do this whole thing the whole time. Laugh at yourself, have somebody make a joke. You'll get a bunch of different facial expressions. A lot of the pictures will be trash, but you're more likely to get that perfect one that you want to use. So thank you for all of your attention today. I hope I was within time limits.
Thank you, Ronnie. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen just so we can talk about the upcoming, the next workshop that we have. So this workshop, again, this one was webinar number 11, and we talked about job application skills and resume writing. And our next month is going to be Dr. Bazan, Julie Bazan, and she's going to be covering well-being in the workforce. And so I will put the link in the chat if anybody wants to pre-register for that. I will also put in the chat a link to get your CEUs for attending today's meeting. If anybody has any questions, please raise your hand in the meantime while I get that for you. Yes, Iris.
Can I get the CEUs even if I don't have my certification yet?
I'm sorry, that was a little hard to hear. What was that?
Well, I can get the CEUs even if I don't have the first. Is it better now? Will I be able to get the CEUs if I don't have the certification that's pending?
Oh, if you save, so once you get the CEU certificate, just save that to your computer or print it. As long as you save it somewhere, it'll still be good for when it's time to renew your license. So yes.
Okay. And can I get well, I do have my number for my RN. Will that also transfer over?
No, I believe this is specifically for community health workers.
Okay.
And Laura, you had I'm sorry, Iris, was that the last of your question?
Yes. Thank you.
And Laura, yes, you had a question.
Well, I put it in the chat, but my question was, because I'm a community health worker student, would I still be eligible for the CEUs today?
Let me have my director answer that really quick.
Hey, that's a great question. So you're able to use this credit for whatever, maybe something else for your work, but towards your CHW, no, until you get that CHW number. Once you finish and the state gives you that number, then you're able to use the CEUs. But until then, it will not go towards the CEUs that you'll need after you get your certification.
Okay, thank you for answering my question.
Sure, Laura, thank you for asking.
And I just put in the chat, I put the link for your CEUs, and then I'm about to put the link for our next course if y'all were interested in that. Okay, both links are in the chat. Do we have any other questions I can answer or help out with anybody? Anything about resumes, cover letters, interviews? Okay, I'm not seeing anything. Thank you all for attending this session. It was great. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. We will be getting those that CEU to y'all shortly. Thank you, everybody.
You'll email them to us?
The link is in the chat. Once you fill out the link, then we email everybody the certificate.
Okay, thank you so much. God, it was a great, awesome. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Hi, I have a question before I go. This is Pamela.
Yes, Pamela.
I did put a message out, a question out there. Will we receive an email with the information from the slideshow today from the presentation and also the links? Will we receive an email for that, or do we need to try to copy these links now?
If you could please try to copy the links now. As far as the PowerPoint, the slides, we can definitely send that out.
Okay, great. Hold
Yes,
on. Okay, thank you. I'll go ahead and copy. Paste them somewhere.
Also, the recording is made available. Yeah.
Thank you. I really like that PowerPoint presentation, though. I mean, that was a lot of good information. So thank you all.
Okay,
Thank you
well,
all.
thank
I'm
you
looking forward to
guys.
the next presentation. Sorry, Brittany. Looking forward to part 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Y'all have a good day. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.